AI is everywhere these days. Feels like every time I turn around, it's doing something else incredible.
It really is amazing. Like, just the other day I saw this thing where,
Yeah, writing code, making art, even composing music, right?
right,
It's exciting, but it also makes you wonder about, well, a lot of things. And that's exactly why we're diving into this research today. Can AI really think critically? Because that's a big one, right? Especially in education, where AI tools are, well, they're kind of becoming the norm.
yeah, and I think what's so refreshing about this paper is not just, sounding the alarm about AI taking over classrooms or anything like that. It's actually a really practical look at how we can use AI responsibly, especially when we're talking about assessment, which is a huge EE topic right now.
It is,
You know,
because one of the big worries is students just using these tools to, get their work done without actually learning the stuff. And nobody wants to end up just memorizing facts that some AI can spit out in a second anyway, right?
exactly.
So this paper introduces something they call the MAGE Framework, and it's all about designing, get this, AI resilient assessments.
It's a really interesting approach, basically trying to understand like how AI works, its strengths, its weaknesses, so we can actually create assignments that, challenge students in a way that's actually relevant for, the world we're living in now.
Okay, I love that. But before we go too far, let's back up a sec. When we say critical thinking, in this context, what are we actually talking about?
Right, because it's not just about knowing a bunch of stuff, is it? This paper breaks it down into two main parts. First, you've got those cognitive skills, things like being able to analyze information, interpret it, and then explain, your thought process.
Okay, so like the tools you need to think critically in the first place.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really cool. They also talk about something called the values of inquiry. Basically, it's about how good your thinking is, Are you being accurate, relevant? Are you looking at things from different angles? And this is something that even like really sophisticated AI, even stuff like ChatGPT, really struggles with.
Interesting. So it's not just what you think, but how you think it. And that how part, that's a lot harder to fake, even
Right.
for an AI that might have access to like a zillion data points.
Right. It's one thing to know the information, but it's another thing to know what to do with it and
Mm.
do it well.
Which makes me wonder, how do you actually measure those values of inquiry?
That's a great question, and it's where this research, I think, is really useful, really practical.
Yeah.
Because they actually did this whole case study, a biology reflection paper, to see how well ChatGPT could handle a task that required more than just, spitting back information.
Okay, so this isn't just your typical AI versus human kind of test then.
Right.
What did this essay assignment involve?
So students had to analyze a piece of art by this Australian artist, and then they had to connect that art to the artist's relationship with the desert specifically. And then the real kicker, they had to compare that to their own cultural connection to nature.
Wow, okay, that's a lot. There's some serious critical thinking baked into that assignment. So how did they test ChatGPT on that? Did they just like give it the essay question and say, go for it?
Well, that wouldn't be a very good experiment, would it? What they actually did is really clever. They gave ChatGPT 3 different prompts for the same essay. First, just the original prompt, as is. Then a slightly changed version, just a little tweaking. And then finally, a heavily what we call prompt engineered version.
Hold on. Prompt engineered. For those of us who don't speak fluent AI, what does that even mean?
Basically, it means they gave ChatGPT more and more specific instructions and background information with each prompt. Sort of like, giving it a little extra help to see if it could do any better.
Oh, okay, like giving somebody hints during a trivia game. So it's like they were trying to see if ChatGPT could, I don't know, if its game with a little coaching, did it work?
That's the big question,
Yeah.
right? And the results were, well, let's just say they were pretty interesting.
Oh. So even with all the extra help, ChatGPT still couldn't quite crack it.
Yeah, even with the hints, it still really struggled with those core critical thinking skills, the ones the researchers were really looking for anyway.
You'd think with all that extra guidance, it would have been able to pull it off. What happened? Did it totally bomb the assignment?
It's a little more complicated than that. Remember those values of inquiry we were talking about?
Uh-huh.
Accuracy, relevance, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, the researchers found that, yeah, ChatGPT could write grammatically correct sentences and even make its writing sound kind of coherent. But it just couldn't seem to grasp those deeper levels of critical thinking.
Oh, interesting. Can you give us an example? Like, what did these misses actually look like in ChatGPT's essays?
Okay, so remember how the essay asked students to analyze the work of an Australian artist?
Uh-huh.
Well, get this. When they gave ChatGPT the original prompt, the one without any extra help, it just completely made up an artist and their artwork.
Wait, it just invented stuff? Come on, ChatGPT, you're busted.
Right. And that's exactly where those values of inquiry become so important. ChatGPT's answer might have sounded, I don't know, believable on the surface, but it was all based on a lie, so it wasn't relevant at all.
Right, it's like trying to have this deep discussion about something that doesn't even exist. You can't do it.
Right.
So did it get any better with the more helpful prompts?
It did, a little. But even with that heavily engineered prompt, the one where they basically gave ChatGPT all the details about a real artist and their art, it still needed a ton of hand-holding. Like, it couldn't really do anything original.
Interesting. So it's like it could follow instructions, but not really think for itself. It couldn't connect the dots.
Exactly. And that's a really important distinction to make.
It is. But this has all been very theoretical so far. Let's bring it back down to earth for a second. Why does any of this even matter for, the average person listening to this right now? Why should they care if AI can write a good essay or not?
That's the real question, isn't it? And honestly, this research isn't about trying to, catch students cheating or anything like that. It's about understanding the limits of these tools and, figuring out how we need to adapt our whole approach to education.
Right, so it's bigger than just this one paper.
Way bigger.
Okay, so let's break it down then. For students listening, what's the big takeaway for them?
I'd say the biggest thing is, don't fall into that trap of thinking that AI is some kind of magic shortcut. Because it's not.
Right.
Yeah, these tools can be super helpful for research and stuff, brainstorming, even just getting past writer's block. But if you start relying on them too much, you're not going to develop those critical thinking skills you need, not just to get through school, but to, actually succeed in life.
It's like using GPS everywhere you go. Sure, you'll probably get where you need to be, but you're never going to learn the streets or even how to read a map.
Exactly.
Okay, what about educators? What should they be thinking about when they're designing assignments and trying to, outsmart AI? If that's even possible.
Well, that's where that MAGE framework comes in. It's all about creating assignments that really focus on those values of inquiry, the stuff we keep coming back to.
Right.
So instead of just asking for, a list of facts, which AI can do in its sleep, challenge students to do more.
Yeah.
Connect those facts to their own lives,
Yeah.
Analyze problems that don't have easy answers. Really dig deep into the why behind the what.
So instead of just testing for knowledge, we need to test for, actual understanding.
Yes.
The ability to take all that knowledge and actually do something with it.
Exactly. The more we can push students beyond just memorizing and spitting back information, the better.
I love that. This has been so insightful. But before we wrap up this deep dive, something's been kind of bugging me. It's something the paper mentioned in its limitations section, actually. And it makes me think about that even bigger picture here. It's this whole thing about the paper focusing on written assessments, right?
Yeah.
Essays and stuff.
Right.
But we're living in this world where AI is getting so good at so many things. It's already making art, it's writing music, it's even writing code like we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
So how do we even start to measure critical thinking in those other areas? I mean, we're talking about a whole different ballgame here, aren't we?
That's what I find so fascinating about all this. It really does feel like we're just scratching the surface here, This paper gives us this great framework for thinking about AI and critical thinking. But you're right, AI is already pushing the boundaries way beyond just the written word. And it definitely brings up some big questions we need to be thinking about.
How do you even assess originality in AI art when it's been trained on, a zillion images created by humans? Or how do you judge a piece of music written by an algorithm? It's wild.
Totally. And honestly, I think this research is a wake-up call for all of us.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to catch AI cheating or anything.
Yeah.
Or even mourning the death of human creativity or something.
Right.
It's about realizing that things are changing and we got to change with them.
So it's less about finding the right answers and more about asking the right questions, being open to new possibilities, new ways of thinking, maybe even redefining what we thought we knew about stuff like creativity and originality.
You nailed it. Now is not the time to be scared of AI. It's the time to be curious, to play around with it, see what it can do. Let's embrace what these tools can do, but also, keep our eyes wide open about their limitations.
I love that. So for anyone listening who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by all this AI stuff, all this talk about the future, here's my advice. Just breathe. Stay curious and don't be afraid to experiment. The future isn't something that just happens to us, We're building it. And the more we understand these tools, the better equipped we are to build a good one.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's an exciting time to be alive, I can't wait to see what we accomplish next. All of us, humans and AI.
Me too. Thanks for diving into this research with me today. And for everyone listening, keep those critical thinking caps on, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.